Would you like an opinion on a financial matter you're dealing with? Whether it's about retirement, investments, taxes, or 401ks, Scott Hansen and Pat McClain would like to help you by answering your call. To join Allworth's Money Matters, call now at 833-99-WORTH. That's 833-99-WORTH.
Welcome to Allworth's Money Matters. Scott Hansen.
Pat McClain, thanks for joining us.
Glad you're with us. Myself and my co-host here, we're both financial advisors, certified financial planner, chartered financial consultant. Been helping people for the last few decades with their financial futures and been doing this program for the last few decades as well, helping you with your finances. And
you know, Scott, it's I'm excited, and I don't say that often about our show, but we have a guest, which we don't have very often, from outside our organization.
And I've had the opportunity to have conversations with you. You have not.
I have not. I'm meeting Joe for the first time. And Joe specializes in working with the psychological aspects of retirement.
Yeah, I mean, as financial advisors, we spend a good chunk of our planning with people is about retirement, right? It's the number one. It's really about financial independence.
It's actually being able to retire, having the ability to retire.
That's correct.
Right? And whether you want to exercise that option or not is entirely up to you.
And for most people, that's a pretty high financial goal.
That's right.
And getting your kids through school.
Yeah.
Some of those other things. But then it's really about retirement. But that transition when you go from the workplace, particularly if you're a high-powered exec. Pat, I'll never forget years ago, I had a client of mine. She'd been a client a number of years. She was a single woman, CEO of a company with a couple hundred employees. So pretty hard driver. Company was doing well. She loved her job, loved it, always loved it. And without having a lot of other things in her life, that was her primary thing. And of course, she wanted to make sure she had money for retirement. So every time we got together, we'd look at her financial life, and she was more than set for retirement. And she came in again for kind of annual, once a year, she'd drive, come to the office, would sit down and kind of talk through things. And I asked about retirement. I said, Stacy, I said,
can I interrupt for 1 second, Scott?
I'm pretty accustomed to being interrupted by you. So,
what percentage of the time, I know the percentage for me, when people are in that situation, does the conversation veer off of the finance and
that's
into
where I'm going with it.
Okay. Well, what percentage?
So I said, Stacy, I said
70, 80?
Yeah. Well, the finances are designed around what you want to, the goals of the individual that you're working with or the couple that you're working with.
It's a tool.
And you end up learning more about them by having conversations than
around the finances that lead to the personal stuff.
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
So I said, Stacy, I said, last time we looked, you were fine financially. Things have only been better this last year. So you're more than fine financially. Instead of looking at the finances, I said, let's talk about your retirement. She said, what do you mean? I said, well, she said, you said I was set. I said, yes, but let's pretend like today is your last day at work. What's your next few weeks look like? Next few months look like? Next few years look like? And she says, I don't know. I haven't really given it much thought. And I said, instead of thinking about the money, we're fine here. Why don't you give that some consideration over the next coming weeks or whatever? And she sent me an email like a week later. She said, your questions haunted me.
You want that. I kind of like that when a client starts the email.
No, but she says, I realize I have a lot of work to do to prepare for retirement. And which is why we've got Joe Casey joining us here in just a moment. Joe Casey, he's an executive coach, and he really helps people design their next life after they graduate from full-time work. And what's interesting about Joe, he had a long career at Merrill Lynch, 26-year career at Merrill Lynch, and that he decided to do something different. And so now he spends time helping coach people. Business Insider has recognized him as one of the 23 top innovative coaches who are making a difference in people's lives. And he hosts the Retirement Wisdom podcast, which I was a guest of a few weeks ago. Thank you, Joe. He's also the author of the book, Win the Retirement Game, How to Outsmart the 9 Forces Trying to Steal Your Joy.
And Scott, I do want to point out, when he was at Merrill Lynch, he wasn't what they used to call a stock jockey, right? He was the senior vice president and head of HR, human resources. So I assume that you weren't in the trenches in the pit
Different pit. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be with both of you. Scott, great to talk with you again. And I was not in the pit. I had worked in HR my whole career there in different parts of the company, starting in wealth management. And at the end of my career, I was head of HR for the institutional side of the business, investment banking, sales, and trading. And really what I do is help people with exactly as you were talking about, that other investment decision. How are they going to invest their time? And with your help, people can assess how much money they have, but we all never know how much time we have. And so I help them figure out a direction. What are you going to do with that time? And how do you get started? And I use a process that I'm trained in called Designing Your Life, created by two Stanford professors, Dave Evans and Bill Burnett, that brings the principles of design thinking to help you experiment and lay out some possible alternative paths. And so you're prepared for that question. So it's not so haunting, but you actually know the answer.
And so my guess is that in a perfect world, people meet with you years before retirement and start planning this. How often is that the case, or how often are you meeting with people after they've retired and they've realized they're kind of stuck?
How often is it proactive versus reactive?
For me, it's mostly proactive. Usually the most common is about 2 years out, but I also work with people 6 months out. They have a little bit of a different look in their eyes. It's kind of that look you get when you look in your side mirror and said objects may be closer than they appear. And that's what 6 months away from it looks like. I do work with some people who have recently retired or want an upgrade because it hasn't turned out to be exactly what they had envisioned.
What do you mean by upgrade?
Really a reset, because they hadn't given it much thought. They drifted into it and they're past the honeymoon period where it's great to not have to think about that boss anymore, not have to worry about the alarm clock. But I don't know if you've ever been on a vacation where 2 weeks in, you've said, I'd really like to get back now.
Yes.
Oh,
And
yes.
they have that feeling where
Most
I'd like to get back to
vacations.
something different. And so they're looking for something that they know could be better. They have some vague ideas, but they need some help in figuring out what that could actually look like. And so I help them bring some imagination to the planning process.
And how often does someone end up going back to work at some point? People you work with.
More often than you think. Usually, I know that pre-COVID, there were a couple of studies, one by the Rand Corporation, found that 25% of people were going back to retirement within the first 5 years, and not often for financial reasons, but for collegiality, social connection, and wanting to stay sharp and really being bored in retirement. That's changed a little bit post-COVID, but a lot of people are unretiring. But I tend to work with people more on the front end than they are retiring in.
So, Joe, two questions, and then I'm going to ask you to walk me through a process. Do you often do this if it's a married couple with both, or is it one-on-one, or is it a combination of both of those things?
Sure, great question. So I usually work one-on-one, but usually if they are married or in a relationship, the partner is always in the background and often doing some of the same exercises along with them, and I encourage that. I have worked with couples, but I'm not a trained marriage counselor. The only thing I bring to the table is been married 43 years, going on 44 in a few months if I play my cards right. But that's always a year-to-year proposition.
Okay. And so, Joe, I come to you. I'm 2 years from retirement, and I'm a financial advisor, and I'm like, hey, I'm hanging it up, and I'm fine financially. What are you gonna give me that I don't have, or what are you gonna show me? What's the process you're gonna bring me through?
Absolutely. So we're going to start the conversation first about two very simple topics. What are your hopes about this next period of time, and what are your concerns? Let's get into those two things that are on your mind, and then we'll talk about the process that I'll use in coaching, which is really 3 phases. Phase 1 is what's most important to you now? What are your priorities? Because they may be different than they were during your career. If you've achieved financial independence, you may have a different list. So we're going to get clear on those before we start designing anything. And then we'll move into the second phase, and this is where the bringing more imagination to the process really helps. And that's what's possible. What are the different alternative things you could do? What directions could you take? We're going to map out 3 alternative paths for the next 3 years, and we're going to examine those because there's an infinite number of things you could do. We're going to examine 3, and we're going to look at those in detail. And then third, we're going to find out what more information do you need to know before you discern which path is right for you. And we're going to do that through a process called prototyping, which is talking to people who are doing those things that you might want to do. So if you're thinking about, for example, taking up some new endeavor, some new pursuit. In my case, it was writing a book, starting a podcast. Well, I talked to people who've done those things, and you learn a lot and you get it started faster. You might even talk to people who have retired, and what did they learn? What do they know now that they wish they knew when they were at your stage? Or it might be, in some cases, I've had people go back to school. I did that myself. And what's that really like? Can you do it? How hard is it? So you really go into making those decisions with a more informed base. And then finally, we implement the plan. We're going to come up with a roadmap and we make it happen.
And then do you measure to that plan with key performance indicators or goalposts?
Or can you forget about those things at retirement?
Well, definitely with a timeline
Daily
that you set.
scorecard.
But the primary OKR is a smiley face. What's your level of satisfaction? If there are other people in your life, what's the level of their satisfaction with it? But certainly the time frame, which can be flexible, but you want to have some milestones you want to hit before making some decisions. And time frame to experiment with some things. AgeWave had done a study that showed that it takes people 2.5 years on average, and we all know what averages can do and how deceiving they can be. 2.5 years on average to figure out what they wanted to do next after they're retired. And back to what I said earlier, if you don't know how much time you have, that's probably not a resource you want to waste too much with. So I can help people get off in the right direction a little bit faster than that.
And you said you went back to school. What did you, just out of curiosity, what did you study? And
so I went back to school and did a master's degree. It was my third one in gerontology, which is a study of the aging process at the University of Southern California. I did it for two reasons. One, because I had never been old before, so I figured it might come in handy because I got to finish the degree at age 60. But the main reason, all kidding aside, was that if I was going to start advising people and coaching people on the rest of their lives, I want to make sure I was steeped in the research. And that's how the podcast started, was being able to share some of the research that I'd learned there and some of the work that's going on. Because there's a lot happening in the field of living longer and living better. And there's a lot to keep in mind, a lot to avail yourself to.
And you only have 3 masters, slacker.
Well,
you really need to get it together, Joe.
Well, that's because my wife kept telling me I still have so much to learn.
And your book is Win the Retirement Game, How to Outsmart the 9 Forces Trying to Steal Your Joy. What are some of those 9 forces that are trying to steal our joy at retirement?
Sure. So they all came from an analysis I did of the clients I was working with. I started to notice that they were coming up against the same challenges, the same obstacles. And being a sports-minded person, they felt like you were coming up against a new opponent. And they weren't always the same 9, but they were people were usually dealing with 2 or 3. And the first one that came up was boredom. People were afraid. They would tell me, I'm really afraid of retirement. I hate to admit it. I've never admitted it to anybody else, but I'm a little concerned and I'm scared. And I'd ask them, what are you scared about? They said, well, I've got this interesting career. Every day it's been dynamic and challenging. And I'm afraid that once I retire, golf won't be enough. I'll be bored.
I've heard that. I've heard that many a time.
Absolutely. And it sounds great. Play golf every day, or play tennis or pickleball, whatever you want to do every day. But that may not be enough for many people. And so boredom being the first one. And I started to look at, well, what's the antidote to that? How do you defeat boredom? And found out there's actually a lot of research on boredom, which I had no idea about, but I read it so you don't have to. And then I've discovered that the way to avoid boredom is to be curious. And if you have enough curiosity, you'll never be bored, because you can't be bored and curious at the same time. And so curiosity, of course, leads to lifelong learning. And there's so many benefits to that, as you know. And then the other ones that started to come up were really social connectivity. A lot of research on this with loneliness, really being an academic, sort of general of the US has weighed in on this and written extensively about it. But people who coming out of a workplace, particularly we men, may have a lot more of our social relationship tied into work than we may realize. And all of a sudden, when you retire, those loops you were in, you're suddenly out of the loop. Those emails, those calls those texts don't get returned as quickly as they once did.
And
so
there's a loss and a loss of status.
Very much so. And really, you have to really change your mindset, especially if you've been one to keep up with the Joneses. It may be time to lose that and come up with a new scorecard.
So Joe, maybe you can talk about, obviously change the names and circumstances, but a client that had these same fears, maybe a high-power career, did this very well and what their life looks like, and then maybe that same kind of individual who is still struggling and hasn't figured out how to have a good retirement.
So
Sure.
explain to us the ones that don't work.
Yeah, well, one of each, I would thought.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you one that did work. It was with a doctor. I worked with a number of doctors right during and after COVID who wanted to leave the field of medicine. And this particular one was very interested in doing something to give back. He decided to take his own personal experience. He had a health challenge, and he had really gotten into lifestyle medicine, really eating better, et cetera, all these things that we know we should do. Doctors know they should do. Sometimes they don't practice what they preach. So he ended up through this process, ending up creating a health coaching business with his wife, focused on underprivileged residents of the city they lived in and others, and to really educate people about that. And he didn't have that idea when we started, but it evolved throughout it. He was looking for something that where he could give back, something that he could do something with meaning and purpose, but also something that took advantage of his own personal
Yeah,
experience
right.
and his training.
Skill set.
Ones that don't.
So he's
haven't-
working. How
he's-
much time is he spending into that?
It's a part-time endeavor, so it gave him a
Okay.
chance to do some other things to flexibility.
Good.
Most of my clients end up doing a portfolio of things. They're not going on to next one second career. Some do, but most don't. But they keep work in the middle, in the mix, and that's because one thing that people end up missing that they are surprised about when they stop working is challenge. Not the overwhelm type of challenge, but that type of challenge that makes you better, keeps you interested, and makes you a better professional, a better person each year. And so they find a mix of things that help provide that for them. Ones that don't work, I think, are frankly sometimes unwilling to experiment, unwilling to step outside their comfort zone. As an executive coach, I've had a lot of great experiences being trained by great people in the field. And one of them, who unfortunately passed away last year, David Peterson, was the head of leadership development at Google. And he said to me one day, I've never forgotten this, said, there's no growth if you stay in your comfort zone, and there's
Yeah.
no comfort in the growth zone. But I think that's true after you retire.
That's
too.
a good one.
You don't stop growing once you retire. And so it just, the mix changes.
I've got a little thing in my office at home. View comfort as your enemy, risk and uncertainty as your friend. Just to remind myself that we do everything. It seems like human nature is to try to make life as comfortable as possible, but it's not a place for us. It's not a very healthy place for us to sit too long.
Absolutely. And you have to come up with new ways to keep yourself growing, challenging. And I think that's where curiosity comes in as a start. Keeps you learning, keeps you trying new things. And those who experiment, are willing to try new things, I think are the ones who excel. One that didn't work, and it was a valuable lesson for me. I'll share two of them that were valuable lessons early. One was with another doctor who we were talking about this doing new things, and he was having a hard time with it. I noticed a number of them were. And I asked him one day, so explain the reluctance. Why is this challenging? He said, well, you have to understand, we're the best in our field. We're really experts in our specialty. And don't take this the wrong way, but I haven't been not good at something for like 4 decades.
Oh.
I said, I can understand that. Now we have to take a different approach. I said, I will remind you, though, we're talking about trying pickleball in this case. So you don't have to be expert in your first game. The other one, though, is more a learning experience for me.
Yeah, and you think about it's interesting. Let me just like someone who's like say a highly skilled specialty surgeon. You think how many years they spent just
On that.
developing their skill set before they even operated on their first patient, right?
And then be
And then a couple
surrounded
of decades
doing it, but being surrounded by peers that look up to them, and then
and a whole army of resources
in
to help
the
you.
operating room where everyone is doctor this, doctor that. You throw them out on a pickleball court, and the guy's like, he's tripping over himself. It's got to be a little bit like a blow to the ego, especially if look, what makes you good makes you bad, right? And if
Yeah.
you're competitive to be at the top of your field, you do not want to engage in something where you're not.
Right.
You're more like that than anyone I've ever met, Scott.
What?
You're highly competitive.
I don't feel that way.
Oh, are you out of your mind?
Okay, whatever. Anyway, but this isn't about me.
Joe. Yeah, let's make it about Scott, though. Joe, what do you think's wrong with him?
But you did raise a good point, though, about it becomes who we are. In this case, with this particular doctor, I've never met a doctor with an ego, but I guess they're out there. But with this particular doctor, he just didn't want to look bad. And it was something that could have been fun, but it actually was torture for him until we worked on reframing it and he got to see it.
So
differently.
even
Of course
just
he couldn't
so
do it.
even like starting something by its very nature, when you start something new, you're going to be clunky at it. You're not going to be proficient, right?
Absolutely.
And so
it
for him,
became-
that was really challenging, even like going on the pickleball court.
it became part of his identity. I'm the best. And he hadn't really taken that down to, well, I may not be the best at everything, especially something new. But there was a good end to the story. He did try it. He did let go of that and it went forward. The other one was a learning for me as a coach. I was working with an engineer who had retired, and he said, look, I've been all in on my career for 40 years, and I'm embarrassed to tell you this, but I have no interest outside of work, no hobbies, no interests. His wife had actually called me and said, my husband needs you. He just doesn't know it yet. I ended up coaching her later too. But he really was struck by that. He said, I just don't have any interest. I've been all about work, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And so I took him through some possibilities and it wasn't working. And so finally I realized I'm trying to go forward and look forward, but maybe I should be looking back. So we actually went back to his earliest days, childhood, decade by decade. What did you like to do then? Felt like that scene in Jerry Maguire where he said to you, was it always about the money? Wasn't it for fun once? And it gets a blank stare. But as we went through childhood, teenage years, college years, early professional years, things started to come back in that he liked. And he was willing to try those again. So being a wise person, he started with date night. That was a big hit. But he also realized that when they were raising their son, he loved reading to him. And so he ended up doing some reading pro bono in a volunteer program, reading to underprivileged youth in the city in which he lived. And that was a start. But he ended up bringing back the things he used to like, some of them exercise related, and that's what it was. So I had to go backward to help him go forward.
That's awesome.
And in your book, Win the Retirement Guide, How to Outsmart the Nine Forces That Try to Steal Your Joy, do you lay out some of these processes? So you're a coach. You can only work with so many people, right? But some people hire you. Other people will read the book. Does the book kind of go help people down this path?
The book is a do-it-yourself guide. It can give you a roadmap because at the end of each chapter, there's a set of questions and exercises that you can do. And one person who wrote about the book said there's a roadmap here. And so you can take the book and do it. It's helpful to, I think, sometimes have someone, if not a coach, someone else in your life who you can talk through some of the things with, but you can follow the step-by-step thing in there. And not all of these 9 are things people are dealing with. There's usually 2 or 3. So you can go right into the book and say, this is the one I'm dealing with. For me, it's not boredom. It might be, for example, it might be uncertainty. And that might be a place to start. So find the 2 or 3 that you're dealing with and go from there.
Joe, before we leave, I have one question for you. Is this your next chapter, what you're doing now? Do you
Yes.
consider this part of your retirement?
Yes, I do 2 things. For 15 years, I've been an executive coach. I have very active practice working with large companies and get to work with a lot of talented people. Halfway through, I was coaching a great person who was going to be the successor to the CEO of an asset management firm. And he decided he didn't want to do that. He said, can you help me figure out what to do to retire at 55? And so I said, I can't because I'm conflicted, but let me give you some resources. And so that led me to research the second one. So you do both retirement and executive coaching. And this is definitely my second chapter. And I'm lucky to do it. I work with people and help them create a new future.
And what do you do on your spare time? What's considered leisure
I was a runner.
for you?
I was a runner and ran marathons, like Scott. And I ended up reaching my goal, reaching my dream. Really, I'm from the Boston area originally, and I qualified for the Boston Marathon, which was great. But then I got injured and rehabbed myself, got back, and with a half mile to go in the Boston Marathon, I broke my left hip, had a stress fracture.
Oh my
Oh,
And so,
gosh.
it took me 12 marathons to qualify. Finally did, and got there. But I still run indoors on a machine called the Zero Runner.
Wow.
The other thing we do, we have 4 grown kids, and 2 years ago we had our first grandchild. So she's a big part of our life, as all our kids are.
Well,
Cool.
Listen, I'm happy for you, Joe. I'm
Joe,
happy
so
for
you
your clients.
wait a minute. A half mile to the finish line?
Literally
this-
half mile.
you
You
couldn't finish?
I took a step and I couldn't move. So 2 cops came up on a bicycle and said, we've been tracking you for the last 3 miles. And they thought it was heat. But I said, I just can't move. They wheeled me into a medical tent. This great doctor came in, and said to the people working on me, because these two young Boston University trainers said, we can get you back out there. And I said, do whatever you need to do. And she said, I don't think that's a soft tissue injury. And I said, well, I've never had a stress fracture, but I imagine this is what it feels like. She got the head of orthopedic trauma surgery to do the surgery the next day. And that was key. And so I had physical therapy for 7 months, 3 days a week. I was on crutches for 4 months. It's a bad break, but lucky to have done it.
Yeah, well, good.
Joe, I'm happy for you. I'm happy for your clients.
Yeah.
And the name of the book is Win the Retirement Game, How to Outsmart the 9 Forces Trying to Steal Your Joy.
And Joe Casey's podcast is the Retirement Wisdom Podcast that you can get anywhere you get your podcast. So thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks, Scott. Big fan of what both of you do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Well, I thought he was quite interesting. But
that was great.
Let's go to the calls now. We're in California talking with Jen.
Hello. Thanks for taking my call.
Hi, Jen.
Hello.
Hello.
So my question is kind of just a general education thing from me. I am not really into tracking my portfolio, and but I've learned a lot listening to your program. And a couple things, something I've heard multiple times, kind of at least in passing, is something called Roth conversions. And I've heard it mentioned, and seems to be that people think it's a good thing, but I don't really understand in general when and why someone would do Roth conversions.
Yeah, neither do most Americans. So first of all, IRAs, 401ks, these retirement plans, right? They've got special tax considerations. So like a traditional IRA or your 401k through your employer, when you put dollars in, when you choose to contribute to them, the dollars that you put in, you get a tax deduction. So if your household income was $100,000, you put in $10,000 into your 401k, you're taxed just like you only earned $90,000. And you'll notice the difference on your W-2. Your taxable wage is different than your Social Security wage. The money grows tax deferred, so as years go on, you're not receiving anything that you have to report on taxes, and it's only at the time of retirement when you withdraw money, those dollars then need to be added on your tax return, and they're taxable at that time. Okay, with a Roth,
and are you taxed on the growth? So say you put in 10, and it turns out to be 100. So when you take out the 100, you're taxed on the 100.
Yep,
right?
And you're taxed at ordinary income rates, even if you bought some stock that went up tenfold, and you would be taxed as ordinary income. Okay. With a Roth, when you make those contributions, you don't get a tax deduction. So you get no tax deduction going in. It all grows tax deferred, and when you pull the money out, it's tax free. So you're making a choice and saying, you know what, I'm gonna forego a tax deduction today, the tax break today, in exchange for a tax break in the future.
Okay.
So that's how Roth works. A conversion is when we take some existing dollars that we have today, typically in an IRA or sometimes even a 401k, and we move those into a Roth, some of those dollars. And when we do that, that is called a Roth conversion. We're taking money from a traditional, we're converting it to a Roth. And when we do that, we pay tax on the dollar amount that we chose to convert in that tax year.
So when do you do this, Scott?
You do this when you are in a lower income tax bracket than you believe you'll be in the future.
So, couple examples.
You're unemployed for 6 months.
You retire at age 62, and your
pension starts at 65, and you're going to have very low income for 3 years. When you're living off your basic income, and you've got your required minimum distributions on your IRA kicking it at age 73.
So they are great planning techniques.
But you're only going to do it if you believe you're going to be in a higher tax bracket in the future than you are today.
I had this discussion. I will give you a perfect example. I have a daughter that has worked as a school teacher for the last 3 years, has put the maximum in every year, and gets some money back from her defined benefit pension plan. And she's going to law school. And he said, well, now we will start converting this money that was deductible into a Roth IRA over the next.
No income.
She'll have no income.
Okay. So as an older person, does it make sense that like RMDs would be something that would put you in a higher tax bracket in the future?
Yeah, but these don't. You want to do these before your RMDs kick in.
Right. But that's
Yeah.
why you would do it now.
That's
to
right.
Have
But it's
lower
typically if you
RMDs.
have a really good size IRA or retirement, right?
Yes.
Like if you got a couple $1,000,000 or something or more.
And money on the side to actually pay taxes on the conversion. Are you in that situation?
Well, I don't have much of an IRA, but I have a 1.4 401k.
Okay.
And how old are you?
How old are you?
54.
And how much do you earn?
Well, I'm about to retire, but like 230.
And what are you going to live on once you retire?
Hopefully, my brokerage account.
How much is in the brokerage?
1.8.
3.2 million. You make 230 a year.
You
You don't have enough money saved.
well, it depends how much you've been living off.
What have you been living on?
I've been tracking it pretty well, and it's about, I would say, 110, 120.
Okay.
You're
All
good.
right. You're good.
You've got this. So
You're perfect.
you're like to be the perfect candidate to do some Roth conversions the next few
so
years.
let's step back a minute. How old are you now?
54.
And when do you retire?
Yeah, it's bad timing, unfortunately. In November, I had an opportunity to get a pretty good package from my company.
Oh, I know. The reason I ask is, will you be 55 or older in the year in which you retire?
No, I wish I were. I know.
Okay,
I know.
so here's
But she's got enough in outside dollars. There's no.
understand, but maybe she starts a 72T at the same time for a lower amount. In order to actually
No, I'd
split
use
the tax,
I'd
you'd
use
use the Roth IRA
conversion
until 59 and a half.
Yep. You've got a phenomenal
Yeah,
opportunity
you
for Roth
have.
conversion.
This is like
You're like
you
the
see,
poster
Scott and I
child
are
for-
arguing over the different techniques, and you're probably thinking, What are they talking about, right?
Yeah.
So-
You've got phenomenal opportunity.
You've got an unbelievable opportunity for planning. Unfortunately, if you had been 55 or the year,
I know, but I just got this package, and
Okay.
I
Well,
it's
listen.
the right time for
No,
me.
no, it's
if
the
they
right
give you a
time.
package, it's hard to deny a package. No,
Yeah.
you've got some great planning opportunities ahead.
Yep.
And do you think you'll go back to work?
Possibly, I'm going to take at least 6 months, and who knows, and see how I feel and what I think about it all. And
Yeah.
And
I'm
then
not
she-
against it, but
and then she
I
might
don't
not
know how
have
I'm
the
gonna
planning
feel.
opportunity for the Roth conversion.
Yeah, it's hard to say.
Yeah.
It's hard to say. Well, congrats.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
but
right, well,
hire a
thanks very
good
much.
hire a good advisor. Do you
I
work
do
for
have an advisor.
Oh, you
Okay,
do?
I do, and I
And
like them. Yeah.
Good. Just have this conversation.
Do you have stock in the company? Stock in the 401k?
Some, not a terrible amount, but
Okay.
yeah, definitely I want to get out of that probably.
Oh no, because there's another planning technique called net unrealized appreciation, depending upon what the company stock is. and
Which
where you're
company
at.
is it?
Intel.
Don't know how.
I
they
can't
have that.
remember, but I know a number of
Oh,
people
I
that
think
getting.
I'm 99.
It's units.
It's units.
It's
They
units.
have
It doesn't work.
Never
But
mind.
I know a couple people that have gotten those packages. So
All right, Jen.
All right,
wish you
thanks,
well.
Jen.
And just talk to your advisor
Okay.
about these planning opportunities. Say you listen to these really smart guys on the podcast.
and you listen to Allworth's Money Matters too.
Let's head now to Colorado and talk with Hillary. Hillary, you're with Allworth's Money Matters.
Hello. Well, first of all, I would like to tell you I'm a little starstruck. My son and I have listened to your show for years and years, and actually, you both have inspired him to study finance.
Oh, wow,
great.
that's
Good.
exciting.
Hey, I
Good,
want
good.
their job.
Oh, good. Where is he
Yeah, so
going? Where's he going to school?
He is studying at Metro State in Colorado.
Oh, good for him. Good for him.
Yes, he's loving it. He wants your job. So
Oh, he does. All right. Well, that would be one of us. What can we do for you?
All right. So I have a question for you. My husband and I are both part of the school system, school teachers, and we actually are part of a pension program here in Colorado. And so the way it works, obviously, is you get a guaranteed portion of your salary every month once you retire with the years of service.
Mm-hmm.
And so my husband and I, outside of that, have been doing some investing. And we have about $300,000 in Roth IRAs about 350,000 in 401ks.
I'm sorry, is it a
we have
401k or
HSAs.
I'm sorry, Hillary, is it a 401k or is it a 403b?
So it's a 401k
Okay.
because 403bs, we just didn't want to have another stream of payments. We wanted a lump sum account we could access.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have a 457 as well, and that has about $50,000 in it.
How old
And
are you?
So my question, 43.
Okay.
Do I have to tell you?
Yeah, you do. And your
Yes.
and your spouse is of similar age?
He is.
Okay.
And so our house is basically going to be paid for in 6 years.
Wow.
And so, yeah, we're kind of.
You guys are in great
short.
shape.
Yeah, like I said.
Do you have more
We hope
children? Do you have
so.
other kids
Right.
coming up still?
I have 3 children, and so we've actually paid for their college with 529s. Actually, my middle son is in high school, and my daughter's in middle school. So.
Okay. So your
Yeah, so
question
I guess
for
my
us is
question
what?
Is she
Well,
am I perfect with my financial planning?
Oh, you're
That's what it
perfect.
sounds like.
Yeah, you're great at
Yeah.
this. We should be calling you.
I mean, come on. You're
No,
43.
no,
Your house is almost paid off.
Yeah,
You've got a great amount of savings.
Your kids have perfect
You don't,
teeth.
and you don't. It's not like you guys are killing it salary wise. You're
Yeah.
school teachers, for crying out loud. You're doing fantastic.
Yeah.
No, yeah. Well, thank you. Well, my question for you is, I get different advice, and so investing this money, sometimes I will do calculators that basically determine risk tolerance and say, hey, put 20 or 30% of this into bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And so my question is, as I think about it, if we're guaranteed a pension that's going to cover all of our expenses plus some, should I really be looking at it, or should I just be looking at it as more of a risk portfolio? where I have it mostly invested in stocks?
Hillary, I was hoping you were going to ask that question. That was truly
good.
the question. When you started going around this of my pension and it's guaranteed, I'm thinking, I hope she's going to ask, should she look at this as a portion of the fixed income portion of portfolio for your overall portfolio? And that's the question you have is,
Right.
how do I actually look at the stream of income as a percentage of my portfolio? And if in fact, let's say my risk tolerance was moderate, shouldn't I do a net present value of the stream of income and figure out what it is, and then compare that as a percentage of my overall dollars in order to determine the final diversification number? Now, if you understood what I
Okay,
just
so
said
you-
there.
But here's another way to
I do.
Here's how to think about it. We've got pretty good data back to 1925 as far as returns on markets. Since that period of time, there's never been a 15-year rolling period where stocks have not outperformed bonds. So if you bought right at the very top of the market before the stock market crashed in 1929, 15 years later, you were on the positive side. If you bought right before the dot-com bubble.
Positive above bonds, not just
Correct.
positive.
That's correct. Same thing if you did right before the financial crisis, right? So right now, you're 43 years old. You're not going to need these dollars.
Yes.
And
Are your pensions vested for both you and your husband, or are they non-vested yet?
No, it's vested.
They're both vested for you and your husband.
Mhm. Correct.
Yeah.
I
And
would
so
have
what
it-
do you think you should do with the portfolios?
Well, I'm a risk taker. Figure what's the worst case scenario?
I don't
if
actually
lose
view it as risk.
everything?
I don't view it as risk. I view it
Right.
as risk to be too conservative in these dollars.
So what do you think you should do with the portfolios?
Well, I trust you all, and I also was thinking of the Warren Buffett strategy, which most of it's invested in an indexed fund, and just follow the market, follow the S&P 500.
I'm going to go with you. I don't know if I'd put it all in the S&P 500,
I'm 55, 100% of my 401k is in stocks.
but it's not in the S&P 500, and you're not
A
100%
big chunks in
indexed.
S&P 500, and
Total
it's
market,
mostly indexed, but
and
a
there's
few
other
little
stuff
bit,
in there too.
But it's all stock.
Yeah, I'd be very comfortable putting all of
Okay.
the stock. 100. Yeah, because what do you so without we'd have to think like how much is the net present value of your annuity payments or pension payments now.
But that's just an
well,
intellectual exercise. Here's the challenge. Here's why it's hard to be all in stocks. Because at some point in time, whether it's this quarter, this year, next year, 3 years, 5 years, 10, who knows when, there will be another horrible patch in the stock market when the markets are going to fall and they're going to fall and they're going to fall. And every news story is going to be just like COVID, right? Every news story is the worst news ever, right? That's what we've been having for 2 years. It'll be the same thing, but this time it has to do with your investments. And it's going to try to scare the snot out of you. And it's at those sort of times when it's good to look back on from an intellectual standpoint, say, wait a minute, what's the real risk here? What is actually going on? Markets have always come back. They've always hit new highs going forward. Sometimes they take a while.
Right. They're just on sale, right?
They are,
That's right.
but the way you're thinking about it is the right way, which is, look, I've got this guaranteed income that's going to come in at retirement. Shouldn't I look at that as a portion of my bond, portion of the portfolio?
Even if she did it at 43, you'd argue that you should
I would
be
argue
highly
that
active.
anyway,
Yeah.
but that's not what but that wasn't the question she posed to us. The question is, should I pay any attention to these risk calculators
No.
based on the fact that I've got all this
Yes.
other assets here that's hard to measure? And the answer is, don't pay any attention to the risk calculators.
Or if it says have 30% bonds, say, my gosh, I actually have more than that because what the net present value of that future income stream of that pension is going to be.
Yeah, I like what you're doing.
Oh, true. Okay,
Yeah.
that's such
All
a
right.
great way to think about it. I really appreciate
And then
it.
selfishly, when your son graduates from college, right? And we hope that he actually he can go to a school, children can go to a school where they actually get all the coursework done for the certified financial planner.
That's right.
Have him contact us.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, I will do that.
I think it's a great.
Yeah, and they start at the bottom at our firm. I mean, really, the bottom. There's no question where they're doing like the most menial tasks, but there is a
Well, they're not the bottom. That's not like they're mopping floors for crying out loud. They're being analysts and they're helping out on teams, but
Yeah,
it's
I guess-
obviously it takes quite a while before they're at a point where they can meet with clients one-on-one and have their own
That's right. We're not having them wax my car. I guess it's not the bottom.
waxing your car. Oh, wax my car, you punk.
You'd probably do that.
When I was your age.
You'd probably do it.
When I was your age, we didn't even have a wax. We had to polish these cars with just elbow grease. Anyway,
You know, good you got it.
appreciate the call, Hillary.
Thanks, Hillary. And we're talking now with Carla. Carla, you're with Allworth's Money Matters.
Hi, guys. I love your show.
Thank
Listen
you.
to it every Saturday.
Awesome.
So my question is, actually, I'm speaking on behalf of my husband. It's regarding IULs and what do you guys think about them? Good, bad?
What's an IUL?
Indexed Universal
The
Life, Scott.
Index Universal? Yeah.
Like an IA is an index annuity. This is an IUL.
I've never recommended them. I don't own one.
I would not purchase one.
You would not purchase one.
No.
And what would the reason? Like, what are the reasons why you would say
I
that?
think they're gimmicky.
First of all, the first question you should ask yourself is, do you need permanent insurance or not permanent insurance, right? Let's not even talk about whether it's IUL or UL or whole life or variable universal life, VUL. We'll leave that all behind. Let's just say it was
Okay.
the greatest product. It was a permanent product. It was the greatest product in the world. The first question you ask is, do I need permanent life insurance? Which means, do I need life insurance for my whole entire life? Do I need it for
No.
20 years, 30 years, 40 years? You need that. So what are you trying to insure against? Do you have children at home?
No, they're all adults.
Okay. And so are you retired or close to retirement age?
My husband just retired from his main job, and he's working a part-time job now. So one of our friends, or family friend, was talking to him about maybe thinking about doing an IUL just for saving on taxes when he starts to withdraw some money.
Okay. And so here's the pitch behind this is this IUL.
Let me back up. So what ends up happening, there's a lot of people, it doesn't take much to get an insurance license at all.
Okay.
You could do a week class, Carla, and you go down and you take the test and you're an insurance license, and now you can go out and go to your friends and say, hey, I've got this great product. Let me tell you all the wonderful things it's going to do, which
They believe.
yes. But what they don't know are the other 99 other products that exist out there that maybe are even better because they haven't really been trained on that.
Like the alternatives.
Like
right?
a Roth IRA first.
Right? Or a S&P 500 fund, right? So that's why you start with the premise of, do you need insurance at all? And if you do need insurance, how long do you need it for? So in your situation, the kids are out of the house. Your husband's retired. Did he retire with a pension?
Yes.
Okay.
Are there survivor benefits on the pension?
So that if he passes away, some money goes to you. So
if you said no, then we're like, well,
I'm sorry. He actually took a lump sum and invested and has rolled it over into an IRA. So
there you go.
The beneficiary on the IRA.
There you go. Right. So that all that money has been earned.
He didn't invest with the friends who's selling him the equity index annuity.
No. But their pitch is that he can withdraw that money tax-free if he puts it in the IUL, and
But you got to pay tax to get it out of the. You got to pay tax to get it out of the IRA.
Yeah. You would never use money from an IRA and put it into.
You can't.
I guess you could. You could pull it all out, pay taxes on it, and put it in there.
Yeah.
But that would just be
idiotic.
Maybe worse than that.
Yeah, malpractice or
yeah. So there's no conceivable world that I live in financially where you would even try to make that argument. So,
and I could see the time when a variable life insurance might make some sense, or a fixed life insurance, but the indexed, it makes no sense to me.
Well, that's because of
I understand the mathematics. I understand how it all works behind the
market
curtain.
cycles, the whole bit. So what they're selling, Carla, to you is how life insurance policies are structured, which is they go in FIFO and they come out FIFO, which is first in, first out, and which means that you put your deposits in, you draw those out, then any amount remaining there, you can borrow against the policy contract. As long as the contract's in place on the date of death, then it's magic. It's all tax-free.
How about the cost of insurance along the way?
Without, if you've lived in a world without cost, right? Then
it would make sense.
Then it would be much like it would make sense for us all to fly travel private jet if it wasn't for the cost. Is that a bad analogy?
Yes, I think it is.
Okay.
I get it, though. I get your point.
Yeah. You have no need for
not
this.
Not only has most people not flown private, most people don't know anyone who flies private unless they have a little Cessna or something.
I watch it.
Okay.
Watch this.
You're watching too much Netflix.
I watch the.
You watch Billionaires?
Showtime's Billions, right? So you would never use the money in the IRA. Never ever.
Okay.
So your husband's portfolio should probably be 60% equities, 40% bonds and cash, and then a monthly distribution set up so you can retire comfortably. That's all you need to know.
Perfect.
All righty.
Thank you. That was
Carla.
my question.
All right.
Glad
Thanks,
you
Carla.
called.
Take care.
It's funny, Pat. I was thinking this. Was it earlier today? I don't know why I'm thinking about these silly products the insurance company comes up, insurance industry. Like in this situation, if having like an index on the securities market works so well, why wouldn't the insurance company do that with their own portfolio?
Right?
You think they're taking any of their portfolio and say we're going to spend this on options in case the markets do well? No. Because at long term, you're not going to make money that way.
That's an excellent point. And it ignores dividends that are paid in the underlying index.
Well, the way they're structured, the returns.
Well, actually, the fact that they create their own indexes now, which is really amazing.
But I'm just thinking, if that strategy, I understand how they go and invest for that pool.
Yeah.
But if it works so well, why wouldn't they do it in their own
pool?
Yeah.
It does because this is the risk.
Yeah. Right. I understand all that stuff.
Yeah. Well, you do, but I think you're doing that for the benefit of the listeners. But just how that was pitched, that you take your money out of an IRA, pay taxes, and put it into an index universal life, just shows it. What it shows is lack of experience or of the person trying to sell the product.
I remember as a college student, I went to A.L. Williams.
Did you?
It was
The coach?
Yeah. It was multi-level marketing. It was my pastor from our church had somehow he left the church and it became a multi-level marketing guy with A.L. Williams. And I went and they said basically how you can be a part-time financial advisor. And I think it was a gardener was sitting next to me and somebody else, right? And they were pitching me on being a financial planner.
And you decided to finish college instead?
Yeah, I think, yeah. And it was all on a part-time basis. But I remember the pastor looked at me and he's trying to get us all pumped up. And he's, hey, Scott, if you could drive any kind of car, what kind of car would you drive? And I remember looking at him and I thought, you're like my pastor. You're supposed to help me to not think about those things. Those come naturally. Like,
come on, buddy.
The lust of the eyes, the pride of life, and all that stuff. I don't need help with that.
I know that. I was born with that.
That's my first thought.
So I'm guessing you didn't sign up.
No, I didn't sign up. No.
Well, before we wrap up, a quick reminder. We come in on, what is it, Scott, about once every 5 or 6 weeks and just take,
a couple hours
of phone calls.
Yeah.
So we find that, and we promote this through our workshops, through our, not our workshop, but our newsletter that we send out every week, which you can sign up for at allworthfinancial.com. But we are having one of these call bank programs on Friday, May 31st from noon to 2 p.m. Pacific time.
Yeah, so we'll just be in the studio taking calls. If you've got a question for us, you'd like us to answer it, would love to. So we're in the studio during that time. If that time doesn't work for you, we can schedule a time when we're in the studio just doing our normal recording. But you'll want to send an email to questions@moneymatters.com. Again, questions@moneymatters.com. Or you can call 833-99-WORTH. All the time we have. It's been great being with you. This has been Scott Hansen and Pat McLean of Allworth Financial.
This program has been brought to you by Allworth Financial, a registered investment advisory firm. Any ideas presented during this program are not intended to provide specific financial advice. You should consult your own financial advisor, tax consultant, or estate planning attorney to conduct your own due diligence.